Let's talk Lucknow again. I am Mehru Jaffer. किताब वही है, बस किस्से दूसरे. आज बात करते हैं इंशा अल्लाह खान और सादात यार खान रंगीन की रंगीनियों की. By the early part of the 19th century, poets like Rangin and Insha were the life and soul of the city's cultural scene. They were close friends and had made a colorful couple. None in the city could take their eyes away from the angelic face of Insha. The twinkle in his eyes had floored all those who met him, and his thick curly hair invited everyone to run their hand through it. Insha put into his poetry what he found in the lap of his favorite women. He spent a lot of time cuddling and caressing women, whispering verses from behind French chiffon dupattas soaked in scent like sandalwood. He sang eulogies here and recited obituaries there and dazzled the city with his wit. Insha had peppered his writing with many English words as well, as he went around town riding on an elephant. In the 19th century Lucknow, the poets were a favorite of the nobility and enjoyed listening to verses full of praise, of pleasure, and of physical love. Unlike mystical poetry, where the lover and beloved unite only in death, these poets celebrated the yearning and union of lovers in this life. It is the nature of mystical poetry to portray life as suffering and to keep lovers deprived of the company of each other. Bliss is possible only in death, when it is impossible for the interfering world to prevent lovers from being with each other. Whether it is Romeo and Juliet, Layla and Majnu, or Heer and Ranjha. The earthly ashik, the Sufi lover, is united with the mashuk or mystical beloved only after death. By the first quarter of the 19th century, Urdu poetry in Lucknow had shrugged off the trappings of decadent Persian poetry. The solace Urdu poetry brought to the life of the population was like a cool breeze in summer. New elements in their own language were introduced to Urdu poetry like satire, humor, and erotica. Early Persian poetry was influenced by Arab models of meter and rhyme. Up to the 13th century, most Persian poems, like their Arab models, were in the form of an ode, the qasida, that was written in praise of the creator of the world, or an earthly king. From the 11th century, the lyrical love poem or ghazal became the dominant poetic form, celebrating love, both earthly as well as divine. The most lyrical of all love poetry is the ghazal, that has earned a reputation of being the dignity, soul, and the heart of Urdu poetry. Once poets writing in Persian in Lucknow had broken away from Arab poetic forms like the rubai, the ghazal had dominated all other forms of poetry. The Urdu ghazal was popular with most poets as well as the listeners. The style of the ghazal is to beat together vocabulary into aching lyrics of love that pierce the heart of the listener like a dagger, in contrast to mystical love, which is the main theme of Rekhta or classical Urdu poetry. Insha and Rangin had developed Rekhti to focus on a female speaker who is not interested in marriage or in a long term commitment to a lover. The sole interest of the voice in Rekhti is a desire for sheer pleasure. There is no celebration of husband, children, family, marriage, or God in Rekhti, but only for the amorous desire of another human being. Rangin wants to know how long? How long should he remain separated from the beloved? How long should he remain free of love? जुदा उससे भला कब तक रहूं मैं? जुदा उससे भला कब तक रहूं मैं? बारी उससे भला कब तक रहूं मैं? In Rekhti, the female voice talks mostly of the intensity experienced when human beings are attracted to each other physically. This innovative style of writing is representative of the cosmopolitan character of Urdu poetry written in Lucknow at a time when the city had blossomed into a center of a flourishing Indo-Persian culture, a culture that was also inspired by age-old local traditions like the Kama Sutra and the romance between Lord Krishna and the very married Radha of Vrindavan. The need of human beings for pleasure met disapproval in the post-colonial period. Pleasure as an emotion was undermined by imported Victorian values and denounced as obscene. Rangin was almost forgotten because it was said that he wrote vulgar verses. Insha found respectability not because he was a Rekhti poet, but because he wrote a book on Urdu grammar. He is best remembered for the story of Rani Ketki, where Insha does not use in his writing any Arabic or Persian vocabulary. To this day, Urdu critics frown at Insha's naughty ghazals in colloquial language, full of erotic imagery inspired by folk songs. Post-colonial Urdu critics dismiss most of the writing of Rekhti poets as crude and immoral. Much of it is lost, and it is Rangin's reputation that has suffered most, as he is identified solely with Rekhti writing and for attracting attention to himself with the outlandish way that he had dressed. Rangin had covered his head with scarves in rainbow colors. All those who see Rangin as bad, he said. All those who see Rangin as bad, how long can Rangin remain good with them, he wrote. बुरा बुरा मुझको समझता है जो रंगीन, बुरा मुझको समझता है जो रंगीन, भले उससे भला कब तक रहूं मैं? Rangin was born Saadat Yaar Khan in Sirhind. He was brought up in Delhi and was employed as a soldier. For a while, he had traded in horses. Rangin's personality was as colorful as his name, and whatever he wrote was enjoyed by his fans, from romantic Rekhti verses to the Farasnama, or his story about horses. Rangin loved animals and horses. Rangin's close association with the beauties, the women of Lucknow, instilled in him an understanding of feminine feelings that are ignored in societies around the world. Rangin developed Rekhti as the voice of the feminine gender, introducing a very interesting trait in literature. In the Rekhti style, the poet talks of love, life, and longing, but from a woman's point of view. Rangin's Rekhti is playful, cheerful, and it celebrates sex. It is not judgmental or full of satire. Wails Rangin the poet. Where should he hide away from love? Love is everywhere he goes. इश्क से बच के किधर जाएंगे हम? इश्क से बच के किधर जाएंगे हम? है ये मौजूद जिधर जाएंगे हम. A majority of the people began to identify more with the lovers of Rekhti, where the beloved is not a symbol of an unseen God, but is a human being with whom the poet enjoys a happy relationship without guilt. Non mystical poetry like Rekhti talks of pleasure here and now in this world, talks of pleasure here and now in this world, making many dismiss this style of poetry written in Lucknow as lightweight and vulgar. अब अगले एपिसोड में बात करेंगे शायर जुर्रत की, जो इंशा और रंगीन के तीसरे यार थे और कैसे तीनों ने मिलके पूरे लखनऊ को लट्टू की तरह नचाया था 19th सेंचुरी में. खुदा हाफिज.